This video course was created by Invictus Technology Services for the purpose of helping people learn Microsoft 365 topics. We do not represent Microsoft and will be using publicly available information to create this course. If you enjoyed this content, please like and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for watching. MS-100 Part 2 On-Premises Infrastructure Considerations. This course module discusses the important steps that organizations must take in order to successfully move their on-premises infrastructure to Microsoft 365. The goal is to help you understand how to prepare your organization for the transition to Microsoft 365, assess the network bandwidth needs for the migration, learn about the best practices for integrating your network with Microsoft 365, explore different deployment options for implementing Microsoft 365 services, prepare your Active Directory for directory synchronization, and by the end of this module, you'll have a solid understanding of the steps needed to effectively migrate your organization's infrastructure to Microsoft 365. We will also delve into the critical planning needed for a successful migration of an enterprise organization to Microsoft 365. The enterprise administrator must plan out the steps, timing, and assign responsibilities for the migration process. We will cover key areas that organizations must plan for when migrating their on-premises infrastructure to Microsoft 365. It will include a template for a Microsoft 365 deployment planning checklist and an in-depth examination of steps such as cleaning up Active Directory, planning mail migration, planning data storage, estimating network bandwidth, test existing network with Microsoft tools, understanding the best practices for integrating with Microsoft 365, identifying different deployment strategies for implementing Microsoft 365 services, and preparing Active Directory for directory synchronization. And I have this Microsoft source here as I go into the next part, preparing your organization for Microsoft 365. Microsoft 365 is a managed service that provides various tools and services to organizations. However, for companies that have an existing on-premises infrastructure, it is important to ensure that their network is ready for the migration to Microsoft 365. This includes analyzing the network's readiness and the organization's on-premises Active Directory environment. One of the key concerns that organizations must consider is the increase in internet utilization due to the use of Microsoft 365. It is important to determine if the current amount of bandwidth available is sufficient to handle the estimated increase in usage once Microsoft 365 is fully deployed, and to ensure that there is at least 20% capacity available to handle peak usage. Another important aspect of migration is cleaning up the on-premises Active Directory environment. For companies with a legacy environment, it is recommended to conduct a system review and clean up depending on the longevity of their Active Directory environment. This process will help to ensure a successful synchronization with Microsoft 365, whether migrating completely to the cloud or setting up a hybrid environment. One tool that organizations can use to clean their Active Directory environment is the ID Fix Directory Synchronization Error Remediation tool, which I have on screen. This tool helps to discover and remediate identity objects and their attributes in an on-premise Active Directory environment in preparation for migration to Azure Active Directory. This tool is a way to automate the cleaning process and can notify the administrator of errors or fix them automatically. The ID Fix tool detects various errors such as illegal characters, duplicate entries, formatting errors, top-level domain errors, domain part errors, and more. The tool provides suggested fixes for certain errors, and in some cases, organizations will need to manually edit or remove values to eliminate duplication. Migrating to Microsoft 365 requires extensive planning and attention to various aspects, such as network readiness, Active Directory environment, and more. Organizations can use various tools to practice to ensure a smooth migration process. Preparing for your transition to Microsoft 365. As mentioned before, a pre-deployment checklist is a useful tool for companies when deploying Microsoft 365, as it helps them plan and organize the deployment process by setting goals, creating timelines, and defining subtasks. This approach improves efficiency and helps keep the deployment on schedule by tracking key benchmarks. The checklist includes tasks such as determining deployment goals and agreeing on scope and timeline with internal and external stakeholders, inventorying the current environment, collecting information on user accounts, mailboxes, client versions and configurations, network settings, file storage locations, intranet sites online, meeting and instant messaging systems, and any application that works with existing systems. Additionally, it also covers making key deployment decisions such as account creation and synchronization, data migration, integration with on-premises systems, and user device connectivity, fixing potential deployment blockers, preparing the environment and organization, testing the deployment, rolling out to the users, and final steps like migrating DNS settings and informing users when they can start using Microsoft 365 are also included in the checklist. This table serves as a sample deployment planning checklist. It can be used as a template and customized to match business requirements. Estimating network requirements. Microsoft 365 is a cloud-based service that can be accessed from any environment with a valid internet connection. However, it's important to optimize your environment to ensure stability. Even though there's no specific bandwidth requirement, it is important to note that the usage of your organization's network may increase with the deployment of Microsoft 365. So it's crucial to determine if the current available network bandwidth is enough to handle the estimated increase and to have it at least 20% of capacity available for the busiest days. To estimate your network's bandwidth, you can take the following steps. Assess the number of clients that will use each internet egress. Determine which Microsoft 365 service and features will be available for clients to use. Measure the network use for a pilot group of clients that represents different profiles of people and locations. Use the measurements from the pilot group to extrapolate the entire organization's need and retest to validate the estimations before making any changes to your network. Additionally, you can compare your results with the case study Microsoft conducted on its own network. Network integration planning. When planning to integrate your network with Microsoft 365, it's important to analyze your network readiness. Microsoft provides various tools to help organizations test and validate their network constraints, including upload, download, and latency. These tools are designed to help organizations determine the capabilities of their networks both during migration and after deployment. Examples of these tools include the Microsoft Remote Connectivity Analyzer, which I have on screen, which tests connectivity in your Exchange Online environment, and the Microsoft 365 Support and Recovery Assistant, also known as SARA, which can help diagnose and fix Outlook problems. When integrating their network to Microsoft 365, organizations can achieve optimal network performance by treating their Microsoft 365 network traffic as a trusted internet service and bypass the traditional filtering and scanning that is applied to non-trusted internet sources. This typically involves removing outbound processing, such as proxy user authentication and packet inspection, ensuring local egress to the internet with proper network address translation, also known as NAT, and having enough bandwidth capacity to handle increased network requests. Organizations can also improve Microsoft 365 network traffic by considering issues such as configuring and sizing proxy and firewall devices to handle extra traffic, bypassing outbound connectors, determining the maximum number of supported devices for a public IP, and how to load balance across multiple IP addresses. Ensuring the internal network settings do not affect performance. And additionally, when planning network requirements for a Microsoft 365 deployment, it's important to open the shortest path from any location to Microsoft 365 and avoid routing traffic through other company locations, as the more active network systems that are located between a client and the Microsoft 365 resource, the worse the overall connection quality will be, resulting in a poor user experience. Implementing strategy for Microsoft 365. Microsoft 365, in conjunction with Azure Active Directory, offers various options for companies to authenticate into its service. These options include cloud only, This is the simplest option, requiring only a subscription and a sign-in account. It can be managed through a web interface from the Microsoft 365 Admin Center or through PowerShell. We also have password hash synchronization. User passwords are hashed and synchronized from on-premises Active Directory to Azure AD. This allows for users to use the same password for both cloud and on-premises resources. Passwords are never sent or stored in clear text. Next, we have Azure AD Pass-Through Authentication, also known as PTA. This enables seamless single sign-on, or SSO, for users on domain-joined machines on the corporate network. Passwords are validated through standard Windows APIs. We also have Azure AD Pass-Through Authentication, or PTA, with seamless single sign-on. Combines pass-through authentication with SSO, allowing users to access applications without typing in their passwords. Lastly, we have Federated SSO with Active Directory Federation Services, or ADFS. Users sign into Azure AD-based services with their on-premises passwords. This option can be most complex and costly to set up. Prepare your on-prem Active Directory for sync to Microsoft 365. Directory synchronization is a common choice for enterprise customers moving to Microsoft 365, as it allows identities to be managed in the on-premises Active Directory and updates to be synchronized to Microsoft 365. Benefits include reducing administrative tasks, enabling single sign-on, and automating account changes. However, it requires planning and preparation to ensure that the Active Directory domain service synchronizes to the Azure AD tenant with minimal efforts. IDFix, as mentioned earlier, is a tool that helps organizations clean up their Active Directory before synchronizing with Microsoft 365. And to recap, it focuses on removing duplicate proxy addresses and invalid characters, and updating invalid user principal name attributes with valid ones. It helps to ensure a smooth transition to Microsoft 365 and reduces the time required to remediate identity issues during onboarding. In summary, as you plan your migration to Microsoft 365, it is important to plan the on-prem infrastructure required to support the migration. This includes making network decisions to ensure a smooth migration and optimal experience for users afterwards. To aid in planning, it is recommended to use a pre-deployment checklist to set goals, timelines, and subtasks that will help keep the deployment on schedule. A deployment planning checklist for Microsoft 365 is provided as a starting point, which can be customized to fit the organization's business requirements. This module reviewed steps in the checklist, including cleaning up the Active Directory, planning the mail migration, planning data storage, and estimating network bandwidth requirements. It also discussed planning network integration and creating a deployment strategy for implementing Microsoft 365 services, including different authentication options available through Azure Active Directory.